We now have another smart light switch that supports HomeKit over Thread. Now I'm a big fan of using smart light switches with my smart home, so I've been super excited to check out the new Eve light switch. I've used many different smart switches and light switches, so I'm excited to install this one and put it to the test. I'll tell you everything you need to know to determine if this one would be a good addition to your smart home. Let's go. Yo, what's up guys? My name is Shane if this is your first time here, and this channel is all about building an easy Apple home, smart home. We got new videos coming out every Sunday and live streams every Wednesday. Now, full disclosure, Eve did send me this new smart light switch so that I could test it out and share it with you, but there are no strings attached. You'll get my honest thoughts and feedback, just like always. Now, Eve has been a sponsor on the channel in the past, but this video is not sponsored by Eve. They're seeing this for the very first time, just like you. In fact, today's video is sponsored by the Signals for HomeKit app. It's a really cool app for flashing your HomeKit lights and creating these cool little signals, throughout your smart home. More on that later in the video. As already mentioned, I'm a huge fan of smart switches. My rule of thumb generally for smart lighting in my home is if there is a wall switch for any given light fixture, I'm gonna use a smart switch instead of a smart bulb. That way my family members and guests can still use the light switch manually without messing up any of my smart home automations and stuff like that, which wouldn't be possible if you were just using a smart bulb in those fixtures. With smart bulbs, if someone turns the light switch off, your connection to your smart bulb and your smart home is killed, which is not good. Additionally, if you have a switch that controls multiple bulbs, like can lighting or a chandelier with multiple bulbs, then you only have to replace one switch instead of replacing lots of different bulbs. Of course, the only downside to doing this is that you don't get any sort of color control with smart switches as you would get with, smart bulbs. A trade-off that I'm happy to make in order to still have usable light switches. This new smart wall switch by Eve is in fact a connected light switch. That means you will need to wire it in the wall and replace your existing wired switch. It is available right now for $49.95 US. This is the North American version, and this one only recently became available to purchase. They have had an EU version that's been available for a while that will fit, those style of switches and voltage over there. This is an on-off switch, so there's no dimming capabilities through this. It currently only supports Apple Home exclusively, at least at the time of recording this video. So no support for Alexa or Google Assistant, at least not yet, but that will all change very soon, maybe by the time you're actually watching this video, thanks to support for Matter. More on Matter in a minute. The switch does require a neutral wire, so definitely something to take note of and might actually be a deal breaker for a lot of people. So you need to make sure your home has neutral wires before you're able to use this switch. The neutral wires are usually that cluster of white wires bundled together in the back of your switch box. The switch connects via Bluetooth and Thread. To connect to Thread, you will need a Thread border router, something like the HomePod Mini or the newest Apple TV 4K. Now, Thread for a light switch is great in my opinion. Since it's always connected to power, it will be able to act as a full Thread device or router, meaning it can actually extend and strengthen your Thread network. The more you have, the better your Thread network actually becomes, which is kind of the opposite for something like a Wi-Fi connected smart switch. So I've never really been a big fan of using Wi-Fi connected smart switches, especially if I have lots of them throughout the house. That could, eventually bog down your Wi-Fi. So I think this is a great use case for Thread technology. You can use these in single pole or three-way switches, which is awesome. That's a big factor. If you're anything like me, you may have lots of three-way switches in your house. That's basically when you have two light switches, maybe at, opposite sides of the room that control the same light fixture. And if you have a setup like that, you only need to replace one of the light switches here with this new smart switch, which is great. It's a standard Decora size switch, so you can still use this with your other existing switches if you need to. Inside the box, we have our getting started guide with the HomeKit code printed on it right here. the switch and the plate, and then we have a few small wire nuts and screws for installation. Installation was pretty easy and straightforward. They provide great instructions in the getting started guide. Eve also makes a great installation guide video, which I will link below if you want to check that out. Of course, always make sure you turn off the power at your breaker before messing with any, electrical work or switches. And if you have any doubt at all, always call a professional for assistance. You can see here that I'm in fact replacing a 3-way switch. You can tell because I have 2 traveler wires. If you're replacing just a single pole switch, you would just cap off the second red traveler wire on the back of the Eve switch and not use that one. They don't give you very much exposed wire on each of these, which is a little bit annoying. You might have to trim back a little more of the casing in order to connect the wires properly. I got everything connected and screwed the switch back on the wall using the provided screws. I turned the power back on at the breaker just to make sure everything is connected and working right. You can see that we have a HomeKit code right here, so I'm gonna go ahead and add it to my home. I'm gonna use the Eve app to do that, tap add new accessory, then scan my HomeKit code. After a few seconds, it was successfully added to my HomeKit home. Now I can control it in the Eve app or in the Apple Home app. Here in the Eve app, we actually get a chart showing the usage of the switch over time. You can also tap it to see a log of events right here. You can set a schedule here if you want. I typically would just do something like this with my HomeKit automations, in the Home app or something, but what's actually pretty unique about this is that the schedule here is stored on the Eve light switch and runs autonomously without relying on your iPhone, your home hub, or internet connection. So that's pretty impressive. And if we take a quick look at the settings, we can of course change the room and the device name. We can change when the status LED is lit, either when the switch is on, when the switch is off, or always off. And you can choose the brightness, either dark, medium, or bright. It is a green LED, which might be a little hard to tell on camera. The LED does reflect the correct state, whether you're using the Eve switch or, maybe another dumb switch on the same 3-way circuit. It'll always reflect the correct state and change based on the light. If we hop over to the Thread Network section in the Eve app, we can see our new Eve smart switch that is indeed connected via Thread. And it can also act as a full Thread device, extending and strengthening my Thread network, as I said before. And of course, since the Eve app is a HomeKit app and only uses your HomeKit data, your switch is now accessible in the Apple Home app as well, where you can control it and automate it with your other HomeKit accessories. So, as someone who has used multiple smart switches and dimmers in the past, what are the pros and the cons of this one, and how do I feel after spending a little bit of time with this? First of all, it does support single pole and 3-way switches, which is great. Definitely a plus. I can use this just as I have in my 3-way switch setups and, only have to replace one of the switches in that setup, which is really nice. I actually like the design a lot more than I thought I would. I really didn't think I'd be very crazy about the touch style of this thing, since you really don't get any tactile feedback, which typically I like. But you do have the little LED that turns on or off if you have it set to, which will give you some feedback. And you'll also usually hear a little click when the switch turns on or off, which is usually the case for most smart switches. So there is a little feedback there too. And I'm actually a fan of the design. I like how extremely easy it is to hit the switch. I've used many other smart switches that require a lot more precision when you're trying to turn on or off the light manually at the switch. This is very sensitive, which again, I like, but just keep in mind that, if you're combining this with other switches or something, maybe in a 2 or 3 gang box, I suppose it would be possible that you could accidentally tap the wrong light or something like that if you're not careful. Just something to keep in mind. Installation was easy, quite similar to other smart switches that I've used. I do kind of hate the little pigtail wires that you have to use. It just makes it harder to cram all that stuff, behind the big old smart switch in the box. Most smart switches are like this for some reason, so I'm kind of used to it, but I'd really love to see these smart switches give the option of just using like a screw terminal, like actually the Wemo dimmer that I reviewed recently does give you. Again, they don't give you much exposed wire, so You know, you might find that you need to cut some of the casing back, which is kind of annoying. All these are, you know, minor things, but just things I noticed and things to take note of, I suppose. Of course, thread support is great. No extra hub is needed. Using these smart switches can be a great way to build out and strengthen your thread network throughout your house, since they're always connected and acting as full thread devices. Again, these do only support HomeKit right now at the time of this recording, but Eve is committed to supporting Matter, which has officially rolled out now. So I expect these will support Matter very soon, if you know, not already by the time you're watching this. We'll have to stay tuned for that. Eve has already demoed many of their products working not only with HomeKit, but also with Alexa, Google Assistant, and SmartThings, all thanks to Matter. So that should be coming very soon. I think the pricing is very reasonable. About 50 bucks US is not bad for a high quality smart switch that supports Thread and will support Matter. There are switches that cost less, usually connected to Wi-Fi, and there are some switches that cost quite a bit more. So this is kind of in the middle. The biggest downside to this switch is that they don't support dimming. It's just a simple on off, and that they do require a neutral wire. So if you need a dimmer, or if you don't have neutral wires in your house, then this switch is not for you. For everyone else, I think it's a great quality smart switch to add to your HomeKit setup. And once you've added the Eve light switch to your HomeKit setup, check out the sponsor of today's video, the Signals for HomeKit app. This app allows you to easily flash any of your HomeKit lights, including this new Eve light switch. You can quickly flash certain lights in the house to get someone's attention, or you can create signals that flashes multiple lights throughout your house, and you can even set them to different states when, you know, it's done flashing, or set back to the initial state. Just some really cool stuff you can do with this app, and especially useful if you live with kids or other people. The developer is always adding new features and updating the app. An update that's actually coming any day now will add even more integration into Siri shortcuts and awesome new lock screen widgets, which I love. Stop screaming across the house and just use the Signals app to get your family's attention. Big thanks to the Signals for HomeKit app for sponsoring today's video and supporting this channel. Check out the link below to download it today. Let me know what you think about this new Eve light switch and what you think about, you know, just smart switches in general. Do you use them? Do you think this would be a good addition to your smart home? Do you have another favorite smart light switch that you like to use, or are you going to give this one a try? Here is my video right over here on the Wemo dimmer that also supports HomeKit over Thread, and I'll put some links to other reviews down in the description that I've done on other smart switches for HomeKit. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.